What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for May 19th, 2023. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. Yes, it was National Kane Day. No, he was not on the show, but I thought I should point that out. We had a pretty big episode of SmackDown last week, the first post-draft episode. I mean, not really the first post-draft show. That was the day before Backlash. The first show since the rosters went into effect, coming out of Backlash 2 weeks ago. And I thought it was a great show. Very wrestling heavy, set some stuff forward, set stuff up for Night of Champions. Pretty eventful episode. Not that this wasn't eventful. You're going to have shows every once in a while that aren't really overly consequential, obviously. We had Roman Reigns in the show this week again. I don't know if he's on next week. They didn't make it sound like he was, even though I'm pretty sure they're taping next week's show, or they already did, rather, after SmackDown last night, if I'm not mistaken. Because obviously next Saturday, as we speak, is Night of Champions. And typically, because the show falls on Saturday at like 3, or noon rather, Eastern time, they have to do the show. They have to tape it the week before. They typically don't do it like on a Saturday or after Raw or whatever. They typically tape it while the SmackDown crew's already there on Friday. So it's probably already taped as we speak. They set up several matches for next week. Raquel and a mystery partner versus, is it Bayley and Io Sky, I believe? Because breaking news coming out of the show, Liv Morgan has been hurt, as was Dakota Kai, according to Bayley. But Liv Morgan was hurt. We kind of already knew that because she wasn't on Raw this week, hence why they didn't defend the women's tag team titles. Apparently, she must be significantly hurt if they're taking the tag team titles off of Raquel and Liv. So unfortunately, Liv and Raquel are no longer the women's tag team champions. That essentially means those women's tag team titles are cursed. I feel like either like Sasha and Naomi exactly 1 year ago this week walking out of the company as women's tag team champions. They just never really treated with any level of importance, and now they get a decent reign going, do Raquel and Liv, and then Liv gets hurt. So we're going to crown new women's tag team champions, I believe not this week on Raw, but the Raw after Night of Champions. So Night of Champions, despite the original gimmick of the pay-per-view being every championship must be defended back in the day, almost to a fault because they had so many championships it was hard to get every championship defended on the show. Now, not even half of the championships are being defended on that show. Example, a case in point, next week on SmackDown, for a prime example, Austin Theory is not defending his United States Championship at the pay-per-view. Now, unless this match ends in a no contest, they set up a rematch for Night of Champions the next night. That's very unlikely. Why not just save it for the pay-per-view? Theory defends next week against Sheamus. So, the women's tag team title match goes down, like I said, not at Night of Champions itself, the Raw afterward. They announced that it's going to be Raquel and a mystery partner, so I assume whoever teams with Raquel, it's probably out there now, because again, like I said, I think they taped SmackDown last night. It's going to be Raquel and that partner versus Bayley and Io, because Dakota's currently hurt. How hurt, I don't know. But it's going to be Bayley and Io among the challengers, Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green, and Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. So all teams that make sense, because Ronda and Shayna came back on Monday's Raw. They attack Raquel. Sonya and Chelsea were supposed to get a shot on Raw this past week. Bayley and Io don't really make much sense, because Io is a former tag team champion, failed to get the belt back a number of months ago, and Bayley just lost their championship match a week ago alongside Dakota on SmackDown. So she doesn't really belong in there, but I assume they're going to use that match to kind of further the damage control split and the tension tease between Bayley and Io. So those are the matches set up for next week, along with AJ Styles versus Karrion Kross, who called out AJ in a backstage segment, looking at the tarot card. And I'm watching that, I'm thinking, that's cool. Like, we haven't seen AJ and Kross yet. But it's also kind of lame that they're just giving that match, or that they're just spoiling that Kross's next feud is going to be with AJ Styles. And that essentially means that Kross is not, or rather that AJ is not winning the World Heavyweight Championship. Because if AJ wins the World Heavyweight Championship, he's more than likely going to Raw. With or without the rest of the OC, I'm not sure. But that kind of just means that AJ, we already know he's probably not winning the championship, but that kind of gives it away, because why would he feud with Kross if he's going to Raw? Why would they even tease that? So that's not the case, actually. They're doing the match next week. They were just doing that to set up the match next week, which is not good news for Kross. I wish they would use another heel in that position, because now Kross, we now know, is losing to AJ Styles. Another loss for Kross. That's basically the guy's mantra at this point, but whatever. That was the stuff set up for next week. I thought the show itself this week was solid. Not a bad show. We had some good stuff on here. Really lively crowd. It's hard to tell how energetic the audiences are, aside from Puerto Rico. I mean, that was pretty obvious how loud they were, but with a lot of the other crowds. Like, they were in Columbia, South Carolina. It sounded like they were pretty rowdy for the show, but WWE plays with the crowd noise so much that it's hard to tell how authentically, enthusiastic they are. And it sounded to me that it was real, but I can't say that for a sure fact. It did enhance my enjoyment of the overall episode, including the opening segment. They were white hot for Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, who interrupted Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. Primarily Roman Reigns, talking about the tag team title match, their history. Kevin Owens said nothing. He has nothing more to say in this storyline. He has been feuding with the Bloodline forever. I mean, as has Sami, but Sami is ready to finally beat Roman Reigns after losing to him, after sharing the ring with him at Elimination Chamber in Montreal. He's finally able to get that win back and pin Roman Reigns, or at least beat Roman Reigns' team or whatever. I mean, they beat the Usos twice, but never Roman Reigns and Solo. So I'm hoping they win. I can't guarantee, obviously Roman's losing, or obviously Roman's winning the championship or whatever. We really don't know, because WWE could go either way. But I thought they did a little nice trip down memory lane here with Sami Zayn, revisiting the rivalry he had with Roman Reigns, bringing back up all that bad blood. And as they're going back and forth, Kevin Owens again saying nothing, which he didn't really need to. Solo Sikoa saying nothing, which he didn't really need to. The Usos blindsiding Owens and Zayn from behind, laying them out. Roman Reigns not happy, though. He said, I did not approve this plan. This was not my plan. You need to stick to what I say. And the Usos kind of getting in hot water with Roman Reigns and the rest of the Bloodline. So, interesting development here, setting up the Usos versus the LWOs, Rey Mysterio and Santos Escobar for the main event, which was already announced last week. Pretty Deadly making their in-ring debut here on SmackDown. It's going to take quite a bit, I would say, for him and the rest of the Nxt Call-Ups to get over. There's a lot of people already on the roster who are far from over with this audience currently in WWE. And you can blame the booking or blame for whatever reason. A lot of it falls on the booking and just a lack of consistent television time and meaningful character development and stuff like that. But I think Pretty Deadly is a great team. I really want to see them get over and do well. They had a little pre-match video package introducing people to who exactly they are and what they're all about. Kind of like that goofy video package you would see them do in NXT. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the match. I thought it was a good match. Pretty Deadly going over with the win. And I think someone got involved there, or maybe they just cheated. Pretty Deadly's on their own, but they picked up the victory here. And it was the right result, obviously, beating Ridge Holland and Butch. Sheamus is still aligned with the Brawling Brutes. I think he was ringside with them, but I'm hoping that Sheamus can kind of move away from them and do his own thing. Butch can become, Pete Dunne again and do his own thing as well. Don't really know where that leaves Ridge Holland, but you can figure something out. But I thought this was a good match, though, with the right result. Asuka taking on Zelina Vega. These two do have history. I think the first, and I could be mistaken, but I think I remember seeing them first fight in NXT back in maybe 2015, 2016. And this was before Vega was even hired. Vega was hired as a manager for Andrade, I want to say in 2017. Vega, before that, though, worked as an enhancement talent on the brand once in a while, if only just one match, I think against Asuka. So they had a match way back when in NXT. They ran it back 4 or 5 years later on Raw for the Raw Women's Championship on Raw and at Night of Champions, ironically. The final Night of Champions before, I think that was Clash of Champions, actually. But still, the final Clash of Champions before the return of Night of Champions this year. And Asuka won all of those matches. She won here as well, spoiler alert, but it was a good little match. Vega is better in the ring now than she was at that point. At that point, she was just a glorified manager. Hard to take her seriously. She gained a lot of credibility, even in defeat, I would say, with that match with Rhea at Backlash. So she feels more like a threat in the division. She has improved in the ring as well. So I thought this was a good match. Asuka winning. She was beating up Zelina afterward after choking her out. Bianca comes out and makes the save. Asuka attempts to miss Bianca again, a lot like last week, and is somewhat unsuccessful. I mean, she did miss her a little bit, not as much as she missed her last week. The missed stuff is just fucking dumb. I'm all for Asuka going heel, but here's the thing, though. Heel Asuka, babyface Asuka, tweener Asuka, to me it doesn't really matter. I just want her to stop, and I think so far we haven't seen it, but that doesn't mean she won't do it going forward. The fucking dancing, the rambling in Japanese, which is not her fault. They book her to look like someone who doesn't know how to speak English, which we know that she can. We know she could speak English and cut competent promos. But like the yelling and the babbling and the screaming, it's fucking dumb. It's stupid, and she's been doing it for years now. I don't know if that's an Asuka issue or a WWE issue. But the dancing in particular, where she's out there acting like a clown, is silly. It's not the intimidating, badass Asuka we had in NXT, and they really haven't been able to tap into that since she lost their first match to Charlotte at WrestleMania 5 years ago. Ever since then, she has not been a threat. And if she continues to miss people and doing this dumb shit, that doesn't really change anything. The miss stuff has grown tiresome with me. She's been doing it for years now. Bianca sold it like she got shot in the head last week. It was just silly. That's the whole storyline. They haven't even really given these women mic time. It would have been nice if Asuka was out here this week, after last week, explaining her actions. Why did she attack Bianca? What's her motivation? Is she upset that she lost at WrestleMania? We don't fucking know. It's the same thing with Brock Lesnar. I mean, Brock had the exact same issue where he came back, attacked Cody. We still have no fucking clue why that feud's even happening. Same with this, honestly. I mean, you can kind of imply, and like, oh, maybe this is why. But they haven't outright told us, and that's not good. I mean, does it really hurt to have Bianca or Asuka out there explaining why this is going on? I mean, at least with Cody and Brock, Cody was out there to explain. I mean, maybe we'll find out next week. But they really should have done it this week coming off the heel turn last week. That's my thing. Kind of dumb. Grayson Waller making his first appearance in front of an audience here on SmackDown, hosting the Grayson Waller Effect, SmackDown's newest talk show, with AJ Styles, who will be competing for the World Heavyweight Championship at, I want to say Crown Jewel, but it's Night of Champions next weekend, against Seth Rollins, who actually was just cast in a Marvel movie, the new Captain America movie coming out next May, and he's actually not going to be on Raw this week as well, I believe, due to the filming of the movie, which is why they did that sit-down interview style stuff with Rollins, because he's not going to be in the show for the next couple of weeks until Night of Champions. Obviously, he'll be at the pay-per-view. He will not be on Raw again. So does that hurt his chances of becoming World Heavyweight Champion? A little bit. I would still say that the plan is to have Rollins win the belt. And honestly, I'm not really opposed to AJ winning either. It's not even as if, if Rollins loses, it's all over. I mean, he can always win it at some point down the road. If AJ loses, I mean, he's not going for that championship again for a while because he's on SmackDown. This is kind of his one opportunity at the championship. If he wins, I would be very content. I don't really mind either way. Rollins can always win it again down the road. But anyway, Waller and Styles have history as well, a lot like Vega and Asuka, also from NXT. About a year and a half ago, AJ came to NXT after Grayson Waller was talking shit. Grayson Waller actually went to Raw one week, I think to cost AJ a match or to attack him or whatever. And they ended up finishing the feud on NXT back in January of 2022. AJ winning, of course. So he acknowledged their history here as soon as the segment started. He wasn't as obnoxious or going for as much heat as I thought he would. It was kind of an awkward segment. I thought this was good. We got to see a little bit of Waller can do on the mic. Styles' promo was fine. This wasn't really anything out of the ordinary, though, which was disappointing. And Waller ended the segment by saying that, at the pay-per-view, it's going to be it's going to be Rollins emerging victorious as the new World Heavyweight Champion. And then the segment just ended. No brawl, but not even like a comeback line from Styles. He just let Waller say that, and then the segment ended, which was pretty fucking lame. So, I don't know why that was so abrupt. It was odd. It was a good segment. I was hoping for more. Maybe it's intended to plant the seed for a feud between the two coming out of the pay-per-view. I'm not really sure why they would set this up, but then not do Waller and Styles next week, because Styles is facing Cross instead. So, Cross, if anything, feels like the fucking setup guy, which is unfortunate, but whatever. Waller might be the guy they're going to go all in on and have him feud with AJ coming out of Night of Champions, whether it be for the championship or not. And you might be thinking, this obviously means Styles isn't winning. I mean, not necessarily. If AJ wins actually, I take that back. Because if AJ wins, he probably goes to Raw. He's not going to SmackDown. Oh, man, that's just really fucking dumb. So I guess they probably are just foreshadowing that AJ is staying on SmackDown to set up a feud with Waller coming out of the pay-per-view, a lot like the Cross thing, although that's happening next week. Whatever. I thought this was solid. I just was kind of hoping for a little bit more from the first in-ring appearance of Waller on SmackDown. We had the Street Profits in tag team action taking on Rick Boogs and L.A. Knight. So this was set up last week on the SmackDown Lowdown, which you would know if you checked on my review. I do so every single weekend here on the show, so check it out if you haven't already. My review will likely be up on Sunday this week. But Knight basically interrupted Profits on the show, saying, "I can beat you with any partner," and then pointed out Boogs backstage. So that was how this came about. And I said on Twitter, and I said in my review of the SmackDown Lowdown, how fucking dumb that is. It's stupid. First of all, the match makes no sense. Boogs is a babyface. It's a weird dynamic. There's no stakes here. Who gives a shit? Why is this even really happening? To me, there really was no justification for it, because people had tried to say, oh, well, it's a temporary team. It doesn't fucking matter. Knight should be doing something of more importance on SmackDown than either teaming with Boogs or feuding with Boogs. I kind of figured that'd be the case. They lost here, Boogs got pinned, and then Knight attacked him afterward. Exactly what we all kind of thought was going to happen. Unless they ran with them as a team, which they didn't, and nor should they. It's a waste of time. Knight should not be in the tag team division. But this just sets up a Knight and Boogs match. Again, who cares? I like Boogs, I really do, but I just don't think he's worth Knight's time. Knight should be doing something of more importance, like feuding with a Bobby Lashley, who was not on the show, with an AJ Styles, or an Edge, or someone like that. We still don't know really what's next for Bobby or Edge. Edge seemingly will not be Night of Champions. He just came back for this one match and he disappeared again, which is kind of fucking weird, but whatever. You could have had LA Knight out there calling out Edge, calling him a loser for falling short, blah, 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 blah. No follow-up with that at all. No, he's in a fucking tag team match, losing to the Profits, who I like, and it was a fun match, and the crowd was just into it and whatever, but that's just the thing. They were super into Knight. He was super over here. But they have him feuding with Rick Boogs. It's stupid. It makes no sense. Either run with him as a babyface, which I don't really see them doing. They already have AJ and Bobby and Ray on SmackDown, Edge. I mean, those guys all kind of supersede Knight right now. Or you put him in a feud with a notable heel, which they're not doing, or a notable babyface, rather. Bobby's free, Edge is free. There's no reason to have him waste time on fucking Rick Boogs. I mean, come on, it's stupid. He should be doing more than what he's doing right now. The NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, Isla Dawn and Alba Fyre, making their first in-ring appearance on SmackDown here. A lot of NXT call-ups on the show. Cameron Grimes was also in a backstage segment. Not really seeing anything of note, but they at least had him on the show after his win last week. They beat Valentina Feroz and Yulisa Leon from NXT. I think this is actually Leon's first match since she got hurt about a year ago. Maybe not a year. I mean, it was a while ago. She got hurt maybe 6-8 months ago, and we haven't seen her since. So they reunited on SmackDown as jobbers, which was interesting. Yes, Dawn and Fyre are still the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions. The titles are still property of SmackDown. And no, they did not acknowledge what the fuck is going on in those championships. Exactly the way that Roman is still coming out with 2 title belts, and exactly the way that Bianca Belair is still the Raw Women's Champion. They have not bothered to explain why this is still the case. And I don't know. I just think it's silly. It's clear that they're being lazy with it and they don't know what they're going to do. Because otherwise, why wouldn't they have explained, all right, this is what we plan on doing? And I can't even give them the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, they're going to wait until after Night of Champions. The draft has been in the books now for weeks. That would have been the time to at least explain, all right, what's going on here. And don't get me wrong, it's not even as if I want to see the Women's Tag Team Champions back in NXT. I don't. I would rather see them, and maybe I'm just speculating here. I'm not defending them or giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm just thinking, all right, maybe this is what's going on here. Maybe they were going to have Dawn and Fyre face Morgan and Liv for the tag titles, and then Liv got hurt, and then that's what went wrong. Because they were shown watching, we saw them watching Liv and Raquel last week on SmackDown from backstage. So, I mean, if they're going to challenge for the tag titles, I mean, if they're already tag team champions, surely that would mean an undisputed tag team title match. They merge the belts and move on. There's no reason to have on the main roster, NXT, whatever, to have 2 sets of women's tag team titles. This company does not know how to book women's tag team wrestling. It's been better in NXT than on the main roster, but those belts were pointless as well. They don't have any teams. It's not that it can't work, but this company you don't need 2, first of all. But if you're going to have 1 set of tag team titles, they just don't know really how to make people care about it, and it's been so long that I would just move on and do something different with either the tag titles or just make it into a mid-card championship or something. At the very least, they first need to merge the NXT women's tag titles with the main roster women's tag titles and move the fuck on. Maybe they will. They're not in that 4-way next week, which is interesting. They put in Bayley and Io instead. I mean, you could have put these 2 women in there and it would have made sense, but maybe it's because there's something else going on or they're going to merge the belts at some point. We still have no idea. Austin Theory was out there complaining about, I got a little worried when he mentioned Bobby. I'm thinking, oh God, we do not need another Bobby Theory program. They have had a million matches. Move the fuck on, please. Because he was talking about losing that triple threat last week to Bobby and Sheamus. Now, Sheamus did not win. Sheamus did not factor into the finish. Theory did, oddly. I'm not really sure why. You would think Theory would go after Bobby, which I'm glad he's not. Instead, Sheamus came out and laid out Theory with 1 bro kick, and that was it. So we're getting those two next week for the United States Championship. Like I said, they're not even saving it for the pay-per-view, which is weird, but I guess it's a nice attraction for SmackDown next week. Hopefully it's not a one and done and this can be a full-on feud, because I feel like this is a good use of Sheamus. Unfortunately, he's not going for the Intercontinental Championship, which is fucking sad. I guess this is his nice consolation prize. He's already held the United States Championship at least twice. So, I mean, it's not exactly anything exciting. But it's something. It's better than him just being in the corner of the Brawling Brutes. So, I'm looking forward to that match. And then in the main event, the LWO versus the Usos. Rey Mysterio and Santos Escobar representing the LWO here. Good quality main event. Got a good enough amount of time. They all worked well. Entertaining action. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens costing the Usos the win here. And allowing the LWO to pick up the victory. So, I was happy with the outcome. Honestly, I expected the Usos to win. And the Usos did not need the win. It made more sense for them to lose, given the tension they currently have with the rest of the Bloodline, namely Roman Reigns. And the LWO just continue to lose. I mean, they've lost almost every fucking match they've had for months now. Santos specifically just cannot buy a victory. But he did here. Rey Mysterio, I think, picked up the win for his team, but they did win here, which was nice to see. So that was cool. The Usos lose, albeit via interference, so it wasn't a clean win for LWO, but whatever. And Zayn and Owens costing them the win makes sense, so it was a good main event. And then Roman was shown disappointed backstage, watching the Usos lose again. So we'll see what the fallout is coming up next week, and specifically Night of Champions on Saturday. So that's just it. We have the pay-per-view next Saturday. I'm looking forward to SmackDown next week for that United States Championship match, and AJ and Karrion could be a good match as well. I will not be reviewing that show, as I've said before, specifically with the Saudi shows. I mean, a lot of the other pay-per-view shows, I can review SmackDown before the pay-per-view, but I've been at those shows the last 6 months or whatever. I was not at Backlash, and it took place at a normal time, so I could review the show before the pay-per-view that day. But because Night of Champions is so early on Saturday at noon, and I don't review these shows on Friday night, I just don't have the time, there will be no SmackDown audio review next weekend. So just a heads up. No SmackDown Lowdown review either, because I don't think they're even going to do it. Typically on the Saudi show weekends, when the show airs so early in the day, and Clash of Champions as well, they don't even have time to put up the show. So I assume that it's going to be the same thing, where there's no SmackDown Lowdown next week as well. So no review of that, no SmackDown review. I'll put up other content instead here on the channel. But I appreciate you guys checking out this review of SmackDown from last night. I enjoyed the show. It was solid, not nearly as big or as exciting as last week's show. But it was still decent, moved stuff along. You're going to have shows like this. It really does feel like the build to Night of Champions has really been rushed. They don't really have a choice, though, just because of how the event calendar worked out. I mean, I just can't imagine why they're doing it this or next weekend, Memorial Day weekend, when they could have just done it the week after or the week after that. I mean, Money in the Bank is in early July. They could have afforded to have this show the first weekend of June instead of just squishing it in there with Double or Nothing. I assume they did that to take a shot at AEW, but, like, who gives a shit? It's just more content for wrestling fans to consume along with NXT at the same time as Double or Nothing, which is also very dumb. But anyway, though, I thought this was a thumbs-up show. SmackDown next week, probably a throwaway show. The weekend of a pay-per-view, so not really worth reviewing anyway, here in audio form, but I will have my written review up at some point over on WrestleRant.com. With all that being said, guys, thank you guys for checking it out again. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.